Okay, I'm going to give a tutorial on what's known as the one-arm grave grabber. It's not my design originally, but I've modified it since, and our Make and Take group is building one, so I figured I'd do a quick tutorial on it since it was requested. The first thing you want to do is you want to take your deer motor, and you'll notice there's two holes there, and there's two more holes over here. Just put a piece of tape on it that's the same width as your bar. Okay, use a Sharpie, drill it in there. You can wipe it off too, and the whole part will remain. So it gives you two good drilling points when you take it off. And tape it to your bar. Okay, this bar happens to be too short. You're going to want to drill, I'm guessing 1/8 or slightly larger than 1/8 holes here. And you're going to want to use a relatively small screw. These are the ones I used right there, if you can see those. Alright, they're 7 by 1/2 inch. They're not self-threading, but they fit in the hole real nice. I only used 2 of them instead of 4 because the heads would have interfered with each other, and this mounting point area is very strong, so I wouldn't worry about it. So you drill your 4 little holes, and then drill 2 more holes on the side here that are a little larger. I use 3/16, and that's how I mounted the motor. Alright, you can see that here. Alright, there you can kind of see. There's it's screwed down. What I did also is, because they're hex head screws, they're not countersunk or anything, I had to use a Forstner bit and drill some clearance for that, and the wire that comes out underneath. You can see there's the wire. Okay, once you get your motor mount set up, put it aside. You're going to want to start with the base and none of this upper stuff, because it's a lot harder to work on this thing with this whole assembly in a way, and believe me, I figured that out pretty quick. You're going to, without the motor on, you're going to want to make this bar here, this mounting block rather, first. It's 2 1/8 inch forward on center. And what I did was I took a 3/16 drill without the block on, the extra block on here. I drilled used a 3/16 drill and drilled about halfway through the first 2x8. Okay, then I came back and got my block and drilled this off center up in the corner all the way through. And then what I did was I drove the entire block, or the pin, which is just 3/16 rod, which is what this is made out of here, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I'll show you underneath here. So that 3/16 rod's not fastened in any way, shape, or form. It's just compression fit. It fit really tight. It's snug. It's not moving. And I made a really good pivot point without any threads to wear out this bar right here. So the measurements on these bars, oh, let me back up. These are retained. The 3/16 bar comes up to about that height. And these are retained with just vacuum tubing, from automotive back vacuum tubing, that happen to be 1/8 inch. It's a 1/16 smaller than the size of the diameter of this, so it fits really snug. Add a couple of washers, and there's a nut under here for an extra spacer just to get the height right. The height matches up with this very well. The bottom of this, or the top of this bar, matches the height of this very well. So I'll get into that in a minute. My first tutorial, which is my second one on this prop, my first one was 20 minutes long. It's too long for YouTube, so I got to speed it up. Alright, so you get this block mounted, you pre-drill the holes. You drill in this thing here, and then you've got this on center, 2 1/8 back, and then center this way, and you're ready to make your rod. This protrudes up, by the way, about 1 3/4 inches. Not a big deal. It could be a little less, a little more. Depends on what type of rod you want to use here. This bar here is important in one regard. You need to make it out of tubing or something with some thickness to it, because if you just used a regular 1/8 inch by 1/2 inch or 1/8 inch by 3/4 bar for this pivot point, it'll sag. And when it sags, the arm's going to go out and fall down. So you need something with some structure to it to keep this from, you can see this is strong enough I can pick the whole thing up. Very little slop going in this direction, but it swings real nice. So this bar, total length is around 7 inches, and from center to center, from here to there, is exactly 6 inches. And then from this point to here is 1 15/16. Believe it or not, the geometry is very important in this. That 16th could matter. If you want to do 2 inches, give it a whirl. This bar here, never mind, the overall length is 4 3/8. Center to center is 3 3 1/4. So you got 3 1/4 here, center to center, 6 inches from here to here, 1 15/16 from here to there, on center. And then the length of the aluminum bar underneath is, overall length is 15.5. This is only set back about 3/8 on center. That can vary a little bit. You can have a little extra hanging over. This is CPVC, which is actually lighter than regular PVC. And this has 1/2 inch CPVC, and it's for some reason smaller. I don't know why, and it's really light. So it worked out really well. This spot here is actually kind of critical too, because if your geometry, when this moves forward, you want to make sure that that doesn't hit your guide plate up front. So this screw here was drilled in approximately 4 inches up from that point here. Okay, the overall length of the CPVC is 12 inches. The mounting block is exactly 12. This is 3 7/8 high to there. I took this block here and I pre-drilled 1/8 inch holes to accept the guard and the guide bolts, which are put in with 1 5/8 deck screws, and believe it or not, a couple of small pieces of a Bic pen. So you can see that here. Let's see if I can get that up in there, show you. So eventually, when this is all done and you fabric it, this will act as a guard and a place to mount some of your fabric, so when the arm comes forward, it has a it's not pulling all the fabric down off of the prop. So it's a regular 2x4, and now we're off to the next step. The hand is just sealing wire. I make a jig for that. I'll grab that real quick. This is just a quickie jig that I saw somebody made. It works really well for making hands, but I'll explain that at another time. Anyway, measurements. The next part is, once you get this hole hooked up and running, I eventually, once this is all painted, I throw up a little dab of grease there. It really makes the movement smooth. There's a piece of Velcro here. You could use a piece of duct tape. That's just to keep this stable, because you can't really put a nut up here. It'll interfere and snag and everything else. So there's no nut here, just a piece of Velcro or duct tape, small. And you want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with your block when the hand comes all the way back. So, on to the next part, which is this block here. The original prop was foam, and they cut a groove out of it, but I decided I wanted something that I could interchange or change out or switch or modify in the future. It made it easy. It's mounted with 3/16 rod. The entire assembly is done with that, and you can see I drilled a 3/16 hole here, and I bent all these pieces up in a vise. I just took a hammer and I put it in the vise and I made my bends, and I cut off a few extra pieces for prongs for here. The hole that this allows it to rotate is one size larger than 3/16. The block size is 7/8 this way, 3 inches this way, a little more than 3, it's like 3 1/4, and then it's about 1.5 inches this way. And you'll notice that where it's located is about 1/3 of the way back this way, and then these prongs are 1/3 of the way forward, so they don't interfere with each other. The only additional thing I did here, 2 other things, was in order to make the head tilt when the arm moves forward, I put a 2.5 inch deck screw here with some more automotive tubing and some picture hanger wire. There should be a washer there, and as you can see, there is a washer here. That allows these to rotate a little bit, which keeps them from fracturing over repeated bending. And the last thing is, I just drilled this in a little bit and put this stop in. You can see this little piece right there. Hopefully you can see it if I get lined up with the camera. And I put a piece of rubber hose on there that only goes in, you know, maybe half an inch, 3/4 of an inch. And once again, everything's press fitted here. There's no screws. These are really solid. I could barely get them out, as a matter of fact. It worked really well. And the same thing again with this. This is just press fitted in. It's not threaded in at all. This 3/16 rod that's right here. So anyway, that's most of the measurements. You pretty much see what I did. Once again, I just make sure, I don't think I forgot anything, at least for the mechanical part of the build. When you're done building the thing, I'll plug this in and get it working for you. I like these prongs because you don't have to get stuck with one skull. The original design actually drilled into it and so forth, and I guess you could change it out, but in this it's really easy. You just set your skull on. Whoops, no, the first thing you got to do is get your, once this is all set up, hope this was explanatory. If not, I'll try to do better next time. So this is just a piece of pipe insulation. And you just pull it down on center, right in the folds. Poke it through. Hook it on. It's pretty sturdy. If it starts to sag over time, just run a wire through it and just make sure it doesn't interfere with anything in here. Okay? Then what I did at the very end was I mounted my motor. I didn't actually mount it. I held it in place pretty much where I thought it was going to be. And I just held it there until I got the right movement. I'm going to plug this in for a minute. Let's see. Of course, everything's falling all over. What you want to see here, if it's in the picture, is you don't want this to come almost perfectly straight. Maybe a hair past if that's your preference. And then you want it to come, we'll let that recycle. You want it to come back to about here, which is about 20 degrees back from square. You see it right there? Okay, so that should do it. That doesn't fill in all the gaps, but it gives you enough to get the mechanism running. There were some discussions about making this piece here all out of PVC, but what I noticed was when I ran the thing, it'll work and it would be fine if you want to save $1 for that piece of aluminum there, but when it comes forward, it wants to wiggle and guide. It just doesn't want to track real nice, and it had a few jerky motions. And this is really smooth, as you can probably see. Anyway, I'm running out of time. Pop your head on there. Put some burlap on this, and when you mount your burlap, you want to mount it while the arm's extended. Attach it here first, and then glue it to here next, while it's extended and the motor's not running. And then come up under the skull, over the fabric, and then put a guard back here to keep this from snagging on your fabric, in much the same way that I did this. I'll show you that again just in case. These are just fence staples that are in there just to hold it. Alright, so fence staples and a 3/8 or a 3/16 drill, and that makes that really rock solid. Alright, I'm done. If anybody has any questions, you can contact me on Haunt Forum. I'm the Bleak71, and enjoy your grave grabber.